All right, testing audio. Is my audio fixed? Let me see. Is the audio fixed? Testing. All right, testing audio. Is my audio good now? Let me see. Is the audio fixed? Testing. All right, testing audio. Is my audio good now? Let me see. Is the audio fixed? Testing. All right, testing audio. Is my audio good now? Let me see. Is the audio fixed? Okay, all right, testing audio. Is my audio good now? Share this. Is the audio fixed? On Twitter. All right. Live streaming ACI development on YouTube. Adding more Cisco ACI APIC REST APIs to the code and providing a full tour code base. Join me. All right. Now that the audio is fixed, welcome back. I'm going to be working on my ACI project. So if you go to GitHub/automate your network and ACI, this is the code. I'm working in a branch called live stream. And what we're going to use is the DevNet always on ACI sandbox. So we go to developer, Cisco com, site, sandbox, get started with sandbox. And what we're going to use is the ACI simulator, which is always on. Now we're going to use the APIC, and all we need for this code is the username, URL, and password. So we're going to sign into the APIC. And first, let's take a step back. So ACI has a management information tree, an MIT, and everything you see in here is a managed object in that tree. Now using Python, we can go against a class, and the class will contain every instantiation of that class, all of the managed objects. We're going to get that JSON and make some reports from it automatically with Python. Now let's switch over to the code base. And as you can see, I have quite a bit of coverage. This is really turning into something special. And if you're watching on YouTube, say hi. I'm here for questions. Let me know if you have any questions. Say hi and let me know where you are joining from. Okay, so couple of things. I use two different Python packages, one called Rich Click that helps me make the command line application, and we'll look at the code for that. And the other one I use is Poetry, and Poetry lets me package up this code and make it available on PyPy so you can do a pip install of this code. Now let's look at the code. So we're going to do a Python code tour, and then we'll come back and run the code and look at the reports. And then we're going to add a new API. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I mentioned Rich Click. You can see that I have decorators at click, and we're going to have the command and then the three options that the user is going to provide. The URL to the APIC, the username, and the password. That's all you need. All you need is a username and password and the URL to the APIC. Now with Rich Click, I can set up the prompt. So when they run ACI, it prompts them. Or they could pass in --URL, --username, --password. Or they could even set it up as an environment variable. And we're going to look at all three ways of running it. Now we set them as required true. So the user has to provide this information. Finally, I define the CLI with the URL, username, and password. I invoke my class of ACI with those three parameters, and then I invoke the function ACI. Let's go all the way back to the top of the code. And in fact, let's collapse all of these functions, and then we'll take a look and tour through the code base. We might not look at all of the code, but we're going to look at a good sample of the code. So just give me a second to collapse all of these. It'll make it easier for me to give you the code tour. And you can see it is all object-oriented, it is all function-based, and these are all little individual functions that handle specific tasks. So, what am I using? What am I importing into Python? Well, I'm using OS for operating system for various things. I'm using JSON and the requests library to interact with the APIs. I'm using rich click as click, again to make this CLI experience nice and easy to code. I'm bringing in YAML so I can make YAML files. Now URLlib3, I'm bringing it in to disable warnings because the certificate may be self-signed and I just don't want to see the warning. I'm using pathlib to provide my pathing, and finally Jinja2 environment and file system loader to get at my Jinja2 templates. So, to initialize this code, I'm taking in the URL, username, and password and setting them up as self.aci.username and .password, which we're going to use down the road. Now, if you're not familiar with ACI, and this is my main function here, ACI, that calls all of these other ones, and let's take a look at those. ACI takes in a username and a password and provides back a cookie. And that cookie needs to be supplied for every other subsequent API call. And we're going to handle that Pythonically. So what does the main function do? Well, the main function, first it makes the directories for the output, then I get that token, and then I call a series of JSON dump string and then my sub function. So go call this function and give me the JSON dump string and stuff it into parse JSON, and then pass parse JSON along to this all files function. I'm indenting the JSON to make it nice and pretty, and I'm sorting the keys. And that's pretty much what the main function does. So first, let's make the directories. So I have a list here of all of the different API folders that I want, where I want the output to go. I'm getting the current directory as os.getCurrentWorkingDirectory, so that you, if you make a folder or run this from your home directory or wherever you run the code from, it's going to create the subfolders required to store the output. Then I loop over each of these, and I use the path join, my current directory, and then I add in my API from the list, /JSON, YAML, CSV, HTML, Markdown, and Mind Map. The different output file types, the reports, the business-ready documents for each of the folders above. So that's my make directories code. Getting a token is pretty straightforward. We're going to set a URL up of the URL the user provides, API AAA login.json. And the payload, the JSON dump string of the payload, has the AAA user and then the attributes of name and password that the user provides. We're going to make a request post to the URL with that payload and verify false in case it's self-signed. Print the status code to the screen and then return response.cookies so that you'll see where I use this response.cookies in all of these other calls. Now, all of these functions are related to those APIs, and they're pretty straightforward. I set self.url as the ACI URL the user provides, and then the class and the API I want. So this one's looking at FV tenant for the tenants. I do a request get. I pass the cookie that we've got from AAA login JSON to authenticate. Then I print the status code, and I take the response.json and stuff it in this dictionary. And that dictionary is what I'm going to pass along to all of the other functions that create the files. Now most of these are all the same, except some of them are a little different. So if I look at endpoints, if I look at interfaces, interfaces is a subpath. So I need to get the node, the spine, leaf 1, spine 2, leaf 5, the APIC itself. And once I have the node, I pass that along into my URL to get layer 1 physical interfaces for that distinguished name, the path to the spine or the leaf or the APIC. But that's the only special one so far. So now, once I have the data, what do I do? Well, to make the JSON file, I interrogate the URL, and depending on which URL we're looking at, I just write the parse JSON, the structured JSON, to a .json file. Now for YAML, I'm using YAML dump of the JSON load string, and then I write it to the YAML file. Now these last 1, 2, 3, 4 functions are where I get Jinja2 involved. So I set up my directory on where to find the Jinja2 template. I load the Jinja2 template as env, and then I say env.getTemplate and my Jinja2 template. Finally, I .render that template, passing in the API, the URL, and the data to template, which is the JSON load string of that parsed JSON. And I do that for CSV file, Markdown file, HTML file, and Mind Map file. Finally, I have my all files function where I pass that parsed JSON into these functions above to actually create the files. Now would probably be a good time to look at the JSON. And I'm not sure how to expand all of these, but we'll do that in a second. So now I have the various Jinja2 templates. And let's take a look at the Jinja2 template. So for Jinja2, I have them all in one template per file type, so for the CSV. And because I'm passing in the URL, I can say if tenant is in the API, then go ahead and make a tenant CSV file. Now, how is this done? Well, we're going to do it together in a second, but we have a header row, which is comma separated. And then if we look at the JSON, it's got a JSON structure with a list called IMData. So for each tenant in IMData, go ahead and write the various attributes, .name, .name alias, etc. Now all of the templates are based off the CSV. I do the CSV first, and then I make, say, the Markdown. And the Markdown is pretty much the same, except we have a header column, and in Markdown that's pound, 1 pound for the header, tenants. My header row, which instead of comma separated is pipe separated. We need a delimiter row to make it a nice table, and then my various attributes. We can flip that same code to be HTML. Now HTML we're going to look at a little bit more because I have these includes, where I'm including another Jinja2 template for the header and another Jinja2 template for the footer of the HTML pages we're generating. And we'll take a look at those in a second. But what I'm using are data table code to, instead of just a static table, a data table. And we'll look at data tables in just a second. But as you can see, it's the same data, but instead of commas or pipes, we're using the HTML tags to create these tables. Now let's quickly look at the data table header, which is a bunch of JavaScripts and cascading style sheets. And because I'm importing this at the top, I'm setting up my header and my body and my HTML page in the header. And then in the footer is the actual JavaScript. Now it looks pretty complicated, and it is, but I'll show you where you can get this JavaScript very easily. And then I close out my script, my body, and my HTML page. Now before we move on, let's take a look at where to get that data table. So we go to datatables.net, and they will give you the cascading style sheet and the JavaScript for your header, and then the footer code. And if you keep exploring this page, as you can see, we have this data table that we can search and do different things. There's different examples that we can look at that have all of these wonderful, ready to go, free to use header and footer scripts that I've put together to make the data tables. Now, the last one is a mind map, which uses the Mark Map extension. And let's quickly take a look at Mark Map, markmap.js.org. Right? I want to turn the Markdown into these wonderful mind maps. And that's a lot easier than you would think. It's just different levels of header depth in the Markdown to give us the nested mind map. So if we look at the Jinja 2 template for tenants, it's the same as the CSV file, except I'm using hashtags or pound symbols for the various depths, my header, and my attribute. So let's go ahead and run the code, and then we're going to add a new API to the code so you can see how this is developed. So I'm going to go into my terminal. I'm going to activate my virtual environment that has poetry and the different packages I need. And I'm going to go into ACEye, source ACI. Now, what I can do here is run Python ACI.py --help. And this is from Rich Click, and you can see the help. Now, I could run this as ACI py --URL --username --password and provide those. Or I could run it interactively just by running it and answer the prompts. But because I'm in development mode and I don't want to repeat doing that, I can export URL equals and set up environment variables. So we're going to set up the URL, export username equals admin, and export password equals single quotes, because this password happens to have special characters. So we're going to wrap it in single quotes. And now I have my environment variables set up. So now I can just run Python ACI.py, enter, and here comes my status codes that I'm printing to the screen. As you can see, we've authenticated successfully, and all of these other API calls, and even the API itself, you can see all these APIs that I'm using, are working. Now that only took a few seconds. And look, I've created 120 reports in just that time. So let's take a look at some of these reports. Let's look at tenants. So tenant, I have the raw JSON, and this is what you would get in Postman or in the APIC browser, or right, this is the raw JSON payload. Now we can have the YAML version as well, where we have each tenant as a dictionary in YAML, if you prefer YAML over JSON to read it. And then the templated so-called business-ready documents. So look at the tenant's CSV file rendered. We can sort, we can filter, and we have every field in this wonderful spreadsheet. There's all of the distinguished names. Just wonderful, wonderful. Now let's take a look at the Markdown. And if we render the Markdown, it looks like this. Nice table in Markdown. And the thing is about the Markdown is that this would render natively in something like GitHub or GitLab or any repository that can render the Markdown. Now the HTML page, you're probably excited to see this data table. Look at, I can search, I can even drag these columns and reorder them. I can show different number of rows. I can hide columns if I don't want certain columns. I can paginate through them. I can search for them. So if I search for John, there's tenant John. I can print this and send this to my printer. I can generate a PDF file of it. I can even make it Excel or CSV or copy it to my copy-paste clipboard. Really powerful, these data tables. Finally, let's look at the mind map. And if we open up the mind map with the mark map, we can see we have a mind map of each of the tenants. And we can collapse and zoom in and zoom out a nice mind map of all of the tenants. Now let's take a look before we move on at some of the more, they're all very powerful and very interesting. Some of them are really cool. Now I don't think this actually has any endpoints. Oh, I do have some endpoints. Wonderful, wonderful. So let's look at the endpoint CSV file. Now in your fabric, this could be hundreds, thousands of endpoints. And what's neat is you get the MAC address of them, you can filter on the MAC, you can filter on the bridge domain, so all of these are in the same bridge domain. We have the full distinguished name, we have the encapsulation, so these are all encapsulated in VLAN 50. We have, now this is really neat, and I did this with Jinja 2. We can get the full path, right? Or we can get the pod, the path, the parent interface, and the interface number. So if I just want to see things on node 102, my leaf 102, I can filter that out. Or if I had multi-pod, I could filter on the pods and figure out where these MAC addresses, where these endpoints are in my fabric. You can see that they were learned. You can see the last modified date. And you can even see the user domain and the VRF distinguished name. So you can see what context these are in. So if I only want certain contexts, then I can filter out on the contexts. And then for the mind map for the endpoints, we have a mind map for each of the endpoints. And here are the two endpoints. Really cool stuff. Now the other one that I really like is physical interfaces. And let's look at the spreadsheet. Look at all this data. It's every single physical interface in my fabric. And there's all this great data that we can sort and filter and find. Are any interfaces down? No, they're all up. Are any of them not using auto negotiation? Right? What's the bandwidth? What's the delay? The full, now again, I do some Jinja 2 templating here so that we could see the full distinguished name, the pod, and the node. So only show me MAC addresses on the spines, or interfaces on the spines, excuse me. Only show me interfaces on the leaves. Show me all interfaces. We can see the .1Q ether type, if anything's configuration failed, the FCOT channel, the effect mode if it's inherited, the ID of the interface, what layer they are. So only show me layer 2 interfaces. Only show me layer 3 interfaces. Just wonderful, just wonderful. As a business ready spreadsheet. The link flap error, the link flap error max, the MDIX, the medium, the last modified, the mode, if it's trunk or access, and these are all trunk ports, the MTU. So you can see I have different MTUs here. Which MTUs are only 9,000? Which MTUs, right, are jumbos? And then we even have, look at all this data, span mode, SNMP trap, the router MAC, the switching state, the usage. Just incredible. Every physical interface at scale in our network. Now let me flush this data because I don't want this to end up in the Git repo. And okay, so how do we do this? How is this achieved? So let's make a new report for physical domains. That's one I haven't done yet. So I'm gonna just copy a folder here, physical interfaces, and rename it as physical domains. And I'm gonna check in the git ignore files, creating physical domains folder structure. And now let's write the code. So we're going to go through the code. And the first thing we're going to want to do is copy one of these functions and change it from self.filters to self.physical, whoops, better spell it right, physical domains. We need a folder to be created for the output, and that's going to be above interfaces, physical domains, and that will just automatically add to the loop to create the output. So that's the make directories. I don't need to do anything for get token. And now I'm just going to copy the last function here, and this is where it gets fun with the APIC. So this is going to be physical domains, and I don't know what class to call yet. And we want to print the status code of physical domains. And now, where do I get this class? Where do I find this in the APIC? Well, in the APIC, physical domains are under Fabric, Access Policies, Physical and External Domains, Physical Domains. And here are the physical domains. Now, what you might not know is that everything that the GUI is doing is just an API call. So what I'm going to use is the API inspector. And this is going to show me the API for everything I click. And if I click physical domains and go back to the API inspector, you can see that it's under uni.json. And if I just keep looking in here, if I just keep looking in here, right here, physical dom p. So I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to use another tool called the Object Store Browser, also known as Visore. And we're going to paste in physical dom p. And because it's a class, we get every instantiation of the physical domains. And that's all that I need. I need this path to that JSON file. And now, let's keep doing our development. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to split my screen because I need that path. And we're just going to copy the last entry, but we're going to say if physical dom p is in self.url, then open physical domains JSON physical domains and write that JSON. And then I'm going to copy this and add it to all of my other file creators and make it appropriate for that function. So for YAML, we want to YAML a YAML file and write the clean YAML. Now, I don't have the Jinja2 templates yet, but we'll deal with that separately. So I'm going to just do this while I'm creating the file types, and then we're going to comment out the function that calls these until we've developed the Jinja2 template. And I'll show you exactly how to take JSON or YAML and transform it into CSV and Markdown and HTML and Mind Map using Jinja2 templates. HTML. And thanks for joining the stream. If you want to just let me know where you're from or give me a little shout out and say hi, I'd love to interact. I am monitoring the chat. We can chat while we're doing this. If you have questions, let me know. If you want me to go over anything again, let me know. I know I tend to move a little fast, but that's okay. So now I have all of those. I'm going to comment out my Jinja2 template functions because I don't have the Jinja2 developed yet. Okay, are you excited? So what we're going to do is we're going to expand physical domains, JSON, and YAML. And we're going to run the code. And because I have environment variables, all I need to do is run the code. So far, so good. And there is physical domains with a status code of 200. And if I refresh this screen, here is the JSON payload. Awesome, of all 7 physical domains, and my YAML version of those physical domains. So let's make the Jinja2 templates. And this is really easy. You're not going to believe. This is a little secret. I'm kind of showing you my secret sauce here. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to the CSV file. And I'm going to add it to the bottom. So what I copy is my end if all the way up to the else. So a whole block of logic. We're going to copy that and paste it and make it unique. So I'm going to delete the header row. I'm going to delete the entries. And what we're going to do is, instead of VZ entry, it's physdom p. I'm going to paste that there. Then I'm just going to take the attributes and paste them. Now what I'm going to do is make the header row. So what I want to do is I like to take the name and the alias and put them at the top. Totally optional. That's what I like to do. And then we're just going to make these the header row. So capitalize the first letter, put the spaces where they're required, expand out any shorthand or shortened versions, and put a comma. So we're going to change this to configuration issues, the distinguished name, externally managed by the local owner, the last modified timestamp, the monitoring policy distinguished name, the owner key, the owner tag, the status, the UID, and finally the user domain. Now this is the header row. So what I can do is in VS Code, click here, Shift Alt, and draw a line, and then collapse it as the header row. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my data row, and I kind of use find replace to help me here. So I'm going to replace the colon with a space, double curly bracket, or mustache as I like to call them, and we're going to replace them. Don't worry that they're red. We're going to fix that in a second. Finally, the last one doesn't have a comma, and we strip away the values, keeping the keys only. And this will just take a second. Now we use our same little trick, Shift Alt and draw a line, and it's going to be open double mustaches, and you can see the red has gone away. And we're going to have, and I'm just going to change this from entry to domain. So for domain, to make it easier to read, draw my line, and I'm going to say domain dot physdom p dot attributes dot, right? So domain, because I'm in my iteration, so for each iteration, the physical dom p, the attributes, and then each individual attribute. Now, before I forget, I want to move name and name alias to the top. And then we're going to collapse all of this down to a single line. Oops. Okay, that is it. The spreadsheet is ready to go. Now, I'm so confident in this, we're going to do the other file types and then uncomment it. So I take that whole block I just wrote, and we're going to do the Markdown next. Because Markdown is exactly the same thing, except we have a header, which is pound symbol, physical domains, and then a pipe and a pipe at the front and the back. And then we're going to find the comma and replace it with space, pipe, space. Now don't do replace all, because there might be commas elsewhere in this code, so carefully go over each comma, and that's it. Now the only other thing that Markdown needs, and this is just going to take a second, it's a little bit annoying, but we need the delimiter row. So this will just take a second to do the delimiter. And thank you for joining again. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope that you use this code. It is only gets, so I'm not changing anything. It's very safe to use, and it's fast, and it's valuable because we have automated generated reports without modifying anything and without fumbling around the APIC looking for this data. So that's that. Hey Angel, thanks for joining, man. Thanks for joining. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to copy that CSV code again. And this time let's do the HTML page. And you might think this is a lot of work. It really isn't. The code is already there for us. So I'm going to add some padding for the white space. And what I do is, right, I want to, let's do it from the top so it's easier for you to understand. I need a header, a table ID, and data table matches my footer information. You can see here, data table, data table, data table. So it's important that I name this table ID as data table. So then I put that in here. I replace the header with physical domains, and then I want a TH for my table header, /TH at the end, /TR to close the row. Now, again, we're just going to replace the comma, but in this time, instead of a pipe, we're going to replace it with /TH, 1, 2, 3, 4, TH. Now check this out. Boom, I've just converted it from CSV to HTML. Now I'm not quite done. I need to close my header and open up my table body. And then here in my table body, another table row, close that table row, TD, /TD, and then replace those commas with TD this time. And I'm not quite done. I need to close the table body and the table outside of the for loop. Boom, HTML page done. Now what about the mind map? Well, I'm going to take this code I just wrote for HTML and open up my mind map template after my last for loop, and then I'm going to strip away the HTML code that I don't need. And I don't need any of this table header stuff. So pound physical domains for my root, 2 pounds name for my name, so that each right, it's going to indent and make this mind map for each name. And then what I like to do is take all of the rest of the attributes and give them 3 pounds. And then we have to name them appropriately, right? So name, alias, annotation, child action, configuration issues, distinguished name, externally managed by, local owner, last modified, monitoring policy distinguished name. And then for owner, because I have owner key and owner tag, we're going to make a parent called owner, and then add a pound symbol to each of these to indent them one more. Oh, Blake, I have ICE. I've done all of this for ICE. I can show you the repository for ICE for sure. But yes, that's a good idea. Now, Blake brings up a good point in the comments here. This is just the APIC API. Anything that gives us JSON back, ICE, Meraki, DCNM, Firepower, anything with a REST API, we can do this with. Or we can do it with parsed JSON with PyATS from show commands or learned functions. I've done ICE. Actually, let me share the repo for ICE. Okay, for Blake's benefit, let me just finish this and then I'll show you the ICE iteration. So I'm going to say key and tag, and then we have status, and we have UID, and we have user domain. So that's it. Those are the Jinja templates. Now for the YouTube audience's benefit, if I go to my GitHub repo, repositories, and if I look for ICE, I have ICE Icicle. So Blake, if you go to the Icicle code, it's the same thing. I have lots and lots of different file types for Icicle, and I've done videos about Icicle as well if you look at my YouTube channel. But yes, ICE has been done with a very, very similar methodology. Okay, so now let's uncomment out those file types. Let's expand the folders. And let's run the code and take a look at the physical domains as business-ready documents. Thanks for joining, Blake. Awesome. Yeah, I've done ICE. ICE is, I should make some more videos about ICE, but it has been done, and I do have some videos. So now what we should see at the very last one is physical domains with a status code of 200. Oh, and I spelt it wrong. Let me fix that in my status code. Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you go to my YouTube channel, let me actually see if I can find my ICE videos. If I go to your channel and videos, or did I do live? I don't know. It's in here somewhere. They're in here somewhere. Maybe live, and I called it Icicle. Yes, so if you go to my live videos, I have business ready ICE. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 live streams that I did for Icicle. So they're all under my live, and if you just look up business ready ICE or Icicle, you can see me doing the development and how to use that code. Awesome, that's awesome. Really excited that you're interested in that. Okay, so now let's take a look. So the CSV file for physical domains. Boom! I can sort, I can filter, I get the annotation, I get the full distinguished name, I get the local owner, the last time they were modified, and some other fields. So now I have all my physical domains as a report. Let's take a look at the Markdown. And again, the Markdown is a nice rendered Markdown table. The HTML page is that data table where I can search, I can drag these fields around, I can print it, I can paginate it, all kinds of great stuff in the data table. And the last one would be the Mind Map. Whoops, wrong button. Click the little pitchfork, and now I have, ooh, what is that? It's a new button. Right, so I have the data table for each of the physical domains as well. There's a new button here I like. and I can export this to an HTML page. I can zoom in and zoom out. I don't know what this new toggle recursively to the next node. Doesn't seem to do anything, but that would be neat if I could toggle through each of these. Okay, so that's it. That's really all there is to it. Now I'm going to flush this output because I don't want to get it into my repository. And then I'm going to test the code together and show you how I use poetry in case you're curious. So I'm going to bump up in my init.py the version and save that. I'm going to delete my previous distribution. And then I'm going to use poetry. So I'm going to say poetry version patch to bump up my version, poetry build to package it up for PyPy, and then poetry publish using my PyPy token, which I have to grab real quickly. And paste in my token. So now let me test this from a fresh virtual environment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate, source testing ACI bin activate, and then I'm going to change into ACI testing. Now let's flush out all these folders to prove I'm not cheating. So I'm in an empty folder here, and I'm going to pip install ACI-U to upgrade it. Now I'm running 1.16, my latest version, and I don't have the environment variables set up. So what we can do is, I'll show you another way you could run this. You can just say ACI-help, ACI-URL, and we're going to paste in the URL. From here. --username, which is admin, --password, which is this password. Right, so I can set it up as environment variables. I can pass them in all on one line. Oh, because I didn't wrap it in quotes. Event not found. Let me try that again. --URL, HTTPS, sandbox.apicdc.cisco.com, --username admin, --password, and then let's wrap it in single quotes, and that works. Now I'm doing this because this is how you could run it. And this sandbox is always on. You could just run this code against that sandbox if you want to play with it. As you can see, I'm iterating over each physical node to get their interfaces. There is physical domains. I didn't fix the typo. I'll fix the typo. And if I do an ls, there's all my folders. And if I launch VS Code, I should have, and we just did physical domains, there is all of the output. So it works from PyPy, from a pip install. Now, before I forget, let's fix that typo, which is going to be right here, physical domains, and I still typed it wrong. Physical domains, which means I need to rebuild the package and republish it, and that's fine. Let's do that real quick. Which means I need to bump up my version and do poetry version patch, poetry build, poetry publish with my token, and there the typo has been patched. Now for my Git repo, we're going to go into the README, and we're going to add physical domains, and we're going to check to make sure, okay, yep, that's good. Commit it as added physical domains API. Save that, push the code. I should have a pull request, and we're going to merge that code into the main branch of the code. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. Since I'm streaming, if anyone has any APIs you want me to play with, let me know. Let's do L3 domains. Now, are there L3 domains? Yeah, there are some. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle on the API inspector and clear it. Then I'm going to click on L3 domains. Back to the API inspector, and we're going to look for the class right here. L3 external domain P. So we're going to take that class and we're going to go back into Visore, the object store browser, and look for that class. And hey, there they are. L3 external domains. And the thing is, all of the information for these are the same. I think all of the attributes are the same. So this will be even faster to add because the Jinja2 templating is going to be the same, the exact same. So we're going to go and make a folder. Actually, we're going to copy an existing folder, physical domains, copy, paste, rename it as L3 domains. Now, is it L3 domains or L3 external domains? Just L3 domains. So L3 domains, let's check in our git ignore files. Creating L3 domains folders. And then we are going to add it to the README. And it's here, L3 domains. We're going to go into our ACI code all the way to the top and add our new function to our main function. And we're going to call L3 domains. In here, we need to create the new folder for the user, L3 domains. And then we're going to copy our function, physical domains, call it L3 domains, and then we're going to get that class information from the object store browser and replace it here. Change this to L3 domains, and then it's just a matter of copy and pasting our file creations, and copy that one more time, and this is going to be L3 domains, L3 domains, L3 domains for the YAML file, L3 domains for the CSV file, L3 domains for the Markdown, L3 domains for the HTML page, and finally L3 domains for the mind map. Now, I'm not going to comment out because, again, the output structure, the attributes, are exactly the same as physical domains. So this one's going to be easy. I'm going to copy from my else to my end if, paste it in, and replace physical domains here and in every reference. So I'm going to do a find replace, and we're just going to carefully replace each of the attributes and save it. I'm going to go to the HTML page, and we're going to do the same thing from the if all the way up to the else. Paste it in and change this to L3 domains and replace physdom with L3 external physdom. very carefully not to replace anything by accident, and save it. And then the Markdown, same idea. Oops, one too many. And finally, the mind map. From the else down, change this to L3 domains, and then do my replacing. All right, save it, close them all up, expand L3 domains, run the code, and let's time it. Let's put a time command on this one just to see how long it takes. So we're going to say time python ACI.py, and we'll see how quickly this runs. And it's seconds. It's very quick. Imagine trying to get all of this information by hand to the GUI. So the system time is less than a millisecond, 0.04 seconds, 9 seconds of user time, and 19 and a half real seconds. And then if I refresh this, here's my L3 domains as a spreadsheet, right? My HTML page, my DataTables page, the JSON, the YAML, the Markdown. Oh, I missed, physical domains. That's why I review all these. So let me go back into my Markdown. Yeah, I know what I forgot to do. This should say L3 domains, which reminds me I should check physical domains, filters, contracts, VLAN pools. So this is wrong. This is actually attachable access entity profiles. Yeah, I missed that. Everything else looks good. All right, so let's, I will rerun the code, but that's why I double check these things. And then my mind map. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to flush my output. Bump up my version. Delete my last build. I already added the README file, L3 domains. Yep, okay, so now I want to say poetry version patch, poetry build, poetry publish using my token. And let's go back into the virtual environment. Source testing ACI bin activate cd ACI testing rm rf star. So there's nothing in here. Pip install ACI-u. I've successfully installed 118. And now if I do ACI, the URL, the username is admin, and the password, and everything is running as expected. And if I do code, I should have an L3 domains with some output. And there is all my output. Working as expected. Now, I don't want to say I'm running out of APIs, but we may have to go poke around the APIC to find some more valuable APIs. Now, I don't know, see there are no fiber channel or external bridge domains. I've already done the VLAN pools. Are there VXLAN pools? No. I mean, I could pick any of these policies and do those as well. I don't know that there are any policies. They all have a default policy, but what about global policies? Do we have any global policies? I've already done attachable, I've already done those. Okay, so there's some QoS class policies that we might be able to do. Just to do more, since I'm here streaming and I have some people watching. So again, what do? We launch the API inspector and clear it. And then we're going to click on the QoS class and look at the API inspector. Now let's go look for, so it looks like it's, so that's the distinguished name. Do I have, let's take a look and see if QoS class, I don't know, that looks like a distinguished name, not a class. No, I do. So I have the different QoS levels here. Just for the sake of doing it. I mean, I don't see why not, right? Or if anyone watching has an API that they want me to do. And these have a couple of different fields, so I might need to, do the Jinja templating for these. But let's do QoS classes, just since I have you here and I'm working on this. So we're going to start with, well, actually, let's commit, right? And this was L3 domains. And we'll push that code up and merge it in. Sometimes it doesn't trigger it. So I'm going to make a pull request, new pull request from the live stream. Yeah, L3 domains. L3 domains. Okay. Pull that code in and then start fresh with QoS classes. So we're going to make a new folder. We're going to copy, let's just copy VLAN pools and rename it as QoS classes. Add it to the README, and it's under physical interfaces, QoS classes. And we're going to push in QoS class folders. And okay, so how do we do it? We start with the very top of the code. I'm going to make a new function for QoS classes. We're going to have our new folder for the output, QoS classes. We're going to make our API call. Against QoS class. Let's rename it first. QoS classes. Did I make it capitals up here? No. And QoS classes. QoS classes status code. And then we do some more copy and paste. And if QoS class is in the URL, QoS classes, QoS classes, and we do happy copy pasta here with YAML. And I'm going to comment out, again, the Jinja 2 templated files until I've made the Jinja 2 template, because the structure is a little different. But that'll come in a second. And finally, the mind map. I'm going to comment out those 4 lines. And let's run the code. Let's get the time off of there. And let's expand QoS classes JSON and YAML. Have some Wawa. Okay, so I have my structured data, my JSON, and my YAML. I'm going to split the screen and go into my CSV, and we're going to copy from the else to the last if, and paste that in, and we're going to, right, if it's QoS class, I'm going to delete this, and we're going to call it for class in, and then we're going to take all of our attributes, and we're going to move name and name alias to the top, and make this a nice pretty header row with comma separation. And this will just take a second, if you can bear with me here. Description, the distinguished name, externally managed by the local owner, last modified, MTU, owner key, owner tag, priority, status, UID, and finally user domain. We do click at the front, Shift Alt, draw our line, backspace it down to a single line. Then we do the same with some find replace. So what I like to do is find the colon and replace it with space, mustache, mustache, comma. And again, don't worry about the red, it will correct itself in a second. And then we need to get rid of the trailing comma, and then get rid of all of the values, keeping just the key and the mustache and the comma. And then we're going to use a little bit more VS Code. Before I forget, we're going to move name and name alias to the top. And again, click, Shift, Alt, hold, draw our line, double mustache, now it's valid, the red goes away, and we're going to say class dot QoS class dot attributes dot, following the structure of our loop, QoS class, and then the attribute. That is going to be a valid CSV file. Click, drag, and hold. Oops. Click, drag, and hold. Make it a single line. CSV file is done. Now, let's do the other file formats, and let's uncomment those out. So the next one is going to be the Markdown. And we're going to add a header, QoS classes, a pipe, a pipe, a pipe, and a pipe. Find the comma, replace it with space, pipe, space. And we go a little bit carefully here because we don't want to replace any regex commas like this. We don't want to replace that regex. So be very careful, don't replace all. And then we need our delimiter row, which is just going to take a second. So we make a nice table. Done. And now we're going to copy the CSV one more time. And we're going to go into the HTML page. All the way to the bottom. After our last table, we're going to pad this with a little bit of white space. And we're going to close the table and close the body outside the for loop. We are going to take the header and change this to QoS classes TD, close the TD, close the TR, find on the comma, and instead of space, pipe, space, we're going to close the table header, shift enter, 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, table header. Boom, we have HTML header. Now we're not quite done. We need to close off our table header and open up the table body. Start a new row, close that row, open up the TD, I think that's table delimiter, I'm not sure though. And boom, replace those commas. Now we have an HTML page. That's simple. Now, to make our mind map, I take everything from the end if to the else, move it into mind map, after my last end for, get rid of the HTML stuff, get rid of the header, open up a new Markdown header as QoS classes, have name as the second level, and then all of these are going to be at least level 3. Oops, 1, 2, 3. Get rid of the TD, and then start adding our headers. Name, alias, admin, annotation, child action, description, distinguished name, externally managed by, local owner, last modified, MTU, Add an extra key for owner. Add a couple more depth pound symbols, key and tag, priority, status, UID, user, domain. Save it. Back to our code. Everything's uncommented. Let's expand these folders where the output's going to land and run the code. That easy. It is that easy to make a report with Jinja 2 from JSON from an API. All right, so now I'm going to refresh. QoS classes. There are all my QoS classes and my priority levels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the MTU and last modified time. Let's check the Markdown. QoS classes. Yep, looks good. We know the JSON is good. We know the YAML is good. Let's look at the HTML page. Yep, looks good. And let's look at the mind map. And I should have 6. Now, in this case, I'm not going to do this now, but we could refactor this and maybe put the priority instead of the name, since the names are all empty, or actually name our QoS classes so they have names. Totally up to you. Totally up to you. Okay, now we're going to flush our output so it doesn't end up in the Git repo. We're going to delete our build, increment our build ID to 19, poetry version patch, poetry build. Oh, the HTML page? Yeah, is there a particular one you want to see? That QoS classes? I've just deleted them. Let me run the code again. Just give me 1 sec. Yeah, I'll do that though. It's the same data. It's exactly the same data as is in the CSV file. For sure. I can show you the HTML web page though. Let's publish this. I'll show it to you in a second. I'll run the code just to validate the PyPy install worked. And then we can take a look at one of those data tables. Yep, no problem. Okay, so my build is all good. Now let's verify it before I push this into the Git repo. So we're going to activate our virtual environment. Testing ACI bin activate cd ACI testing. Let's flush the folders, rmrf star, pip install ACI-u. There's my latest version, ACEye. I need to grab the URL, wrong browser. Username, and then the password. Yeah, what I'll do, I'll show you one of the interesting ones, maybe interfaces. We'll look at the interfaces HTML page. And I'm not sure, Blake, if you caught it, but how I build those is from DataTables.net. So that it's not just a static HTML page where we include cascading style sheets and JavaScript in the header of the HTML page, and then a JavaScript in the footer, which gives us this data table structure. And I've added quite a bit of scripts and style sheets and JavaScript code to make it really awesome. So what we're going to do is, that worked. There's my QoS classes output. Now let's take a look at interfaces. Physical interfaces, HTML. The other thing is I have an extension for VS Code called Open in Default Browser. So that way I can right-click on the file inside of VS Code, and it gives me the Open in Default Browser option. So here's what it looks like. And as you can see, I have 504 interfaces. It is all paginated from the data tables. I could even drag these around. So if I want to make the description beside admin state, I can show all rows or 50 rows. I can copy it into my copy paste buffer, right? So I added all, if I launch Notepad and hit paste, I have all 504 rows in my copy paste buffer. I can even remove visibility. If I don't care about some of these columns, I can customize the page. I can open it up as a CSV file. I can launch it in Excel. Now I don't have Excel installed. I can even launch it as a PDF. All 504 rows as a PDF. I can even send it to my printer. All from the data table code. I can search. So if I search for down, no interfaces are down. And then if I scroll over, I have all of the columns. So if I'm looking for a specific ETH1.1, right, or ETH1.17, or if I'm looking for layer 3 interfaces, or layer 2 interfaces, I can even search. If I go all the way to the edge, there's going to be a search button, or my search is here. I can search for layer 3, and that's removed almost 100 entries. Or layer 2, now I have 96 entries. Yeah, go to datatables.net. Datatables.net is magical. Okay, so that was QoS classes. Now, geez, I mean, we could continue to look. I wonder if I should do like the notifications or the alarms. Here's my monitoring policies. I wonder if there is, right, like I have all kinds of options here. Like it's a full-blown, everything you see here is an API. So I wonder if there's somewhere, like if I go to these alarms, that's an intersite error. Visibility and troubleshooting. Admin. I mean, we could do users or authentication, right? It's just a ton of stuff in here. What if I go to, okay, so there is no virtual networking domains, unfortunately. System. Here are the faults. Like this might be an API that we could look at. Yeah, we might be able to do something like that. I'm wondering if maybe faults might be a good report to have. But that means I need to go back to system. Quick start. I see faults is here. There's even events and an audit log. These might be nice to have without having to click into the GUI. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to quick start. We're going to launch our API inspector and clear it. And let's do faults. And if I go in here, fault summary.json. So let's go to our Visore and look for fault summary. Aha, 33 faults. So this might be a great report, and we can do it for events and audit log and everything. So let's have some water. And let's go to our code. And first let me finish our QoS classes, since I know it worked. Push that into the repo. Do my pull request. And we're going to make, what I say, fault summary. So we're going to make, well, actually what we're going to do is copy fabric nodes. We called it fault summary. Push in my folders. Actually, let me do my README file. Fault summary. Why did I not save my README? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Push that in fault folders and README. Fault README. I'm going to go to the code. And I am going to comment those out for now because I don't have the Jinja template. I'm going to go all the way to the top. We're going to copy the last function call. And we're going to call this fault summary. Add fault summary to our list of folders. And go to our last API call. And fault summary. Calling the fault summary class. Fault summary status code. The other thing that I'm going to point out, because this is all text driven and because it's in a Git repository, we can use Git differentials. Imagine we have no faults and we run this code every 5 hours or every whatever. As faults come in, we can have them as part of our Git repository and see hour to hour the faults that have arisen and with their timestamp and their Git repo with the Git commit message. So we're going to copy our, copy the whole thing, and this is if fault summary is in the URL, fault summary, fault summary, and we're going to copy this a few more times, one for the YAML, 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 CSV, which we don't have a template for yet and is commented out presently, but we will make the template quickly enough. And then the Markdown. And the HTML. And the mind map. Okay, now let's run it and open up our fault summary JSON and YAML folders, waiting for the input to come in. refresh the code. Okay, something is wrong. I didn't get the output. Okay. Why not? Fault summary. And I know I called the fault summary, so it's something in my JSON. Is it my path? Oh, I know what I did wrong, maybe. Fault summary is in self URL. Why didn't I get the output? This has been going so well. I'm not sure. Fault summary. Ha! Did I not save the file? Is that what happened? Maybe because I didn't save the file? I don't know, let's try it again. Let's try it again. I don't see, nothing obvious is jumping out at me. Unless maybe I just didn't save the file before I ran the code. Okay, I just didn't save it. Okay, so there's our JSON of all of our faults, which is pretty good. There's the YAML of all of our faults. Pretty good. Let's make the spreadsheet. Let's make the CSV file, the magical file. And again, it's a nice repeatable process. I'm going to open up my CSV file on the wrong side, of course. I'm going to go to my last instance. Yeah, I didn't save it. And of course you start panicking. What's wrong? What did I miss? Copy that, paste it, and again we're going to have if fault summary is in the API for each fault in the data. Whoops. Flush that out and copy our YAML. Now I don't know which one would make sense for the first. Maybe cause is the best one to have at the start. We'll just leave it as is for this one. There is no name. So we're going to change it to be a nice CSV header row. And I don't mean to go quiet on you, right, so we're just making our CSV header row from the attributes. And then I use my little magical click, shift, alt, hold, backspace them all onto a single line. And then we're going to copy this again. I find the colon and replace it with space, closed squiggly brackets, or mustaches as I like to call them. Don't worry that they're red, we're going to fix them. Get rid of this last comma and then get rid of all of the data fields. We just want the header, we don't need the data. Because again, this is a template and we're going to fill in this information. Now, does that have a new line? No. Weird that this is on 2 lines. I'm going to see how that works out. I'm not sure if that's a problem or not. I'm going to assume it's not a problem for now. Okay, so we have that now. We do our click, Shift, Alt, Hold, open mustaches, fault, dot, fault summary, dot, attributes, dot. Again, our iteration over IM data, dot fault summary, dot attributes, and then our attribute. And I'm all done with the YAML. Click, Shift, Hold, backspace them onto a single line. Boom, we've got the CSV file. Now let's make our other file types. Copy from the else to the if, go into the markdown next after the last for loop and paste it in. Add a header row, fault summary, add a pipe and a pipe and a pipe and a pipe. Find the comma and replace it with space, pipe, space. And carefully replace the commas. And now we need to add our delimiter, our table delimiter, which is just a little bit of tedium, but we've got to do it to make this a nice HTML, or excuse me, Markdown table. And some people have asked me, why do you do all these file types? Isn't a CSV good enough? Because look how easy it is. Why not make the multiple file types? Because it's just a little bit more Jinja templating. So let's do our HTML page. After the last table, add the else. Pad this with some white space. After the end for, close the table in the body. Add our header table information, and this one is called fault summary. Open up our table header, close the table header, close the table row, find that comma and replace it with closing the table header, Shift Enter, 1, 2, 3, 4, table header, replace all those commas. Now we have nice HTML header information. And then we need a little bit more code. Closing the table header, opening the table body, open up a new row, close that row, table delimiter, change our replace from TH to TD, HTML page done. Now, the mind map. From the end if to the else, copy, mind map, after the last end for, flush out the HTML, whoops, be careful, carefully flush out the HTML, and we have a pound fault summary, yeah, I think it's a benefit as well. I agree. And that's why I sort of call them, business ready documents, because anybody in the business can read a CSV file. You don't have to be in IT to open up a CSV file. Now, what do we want our header to be? I guess we're going to have it as QoS. So that's not a bad root value for our mind map. And then we're going to make these layer 3 depth. And let's look for an opportunity to collapse anything common. And I don't know that there is an opportunity here, but we'll just take a look. Right here, non-acknowledged, non-delegated, non. So what we can do is have maybe non as the header here. And then we can have acknowledged delegated, delegated, and acknowledged. Yeah, sure, why not? Rule, severity, whoops, severity, status, subject, type. Okay, all right, let's see. This is exciting. Let's expand our folders. Let's make sure that those are uncommented, our file types. And let's run it and make a report of the fault severity or fault summary. Pretty cool stuff. So we'll hopefully see fault summary with a status code of 200. The other thing, I haven't done this yet, but let me show you with fault summary. From this log, I can control click and open that up and actually get the raw data from the APIC, just to show you that. So now let's take a look at our CSV file. Oh yeah, this is going to be great. Now we can, right, show me only port down, right, or show me, or you know, right, here's all my configuration failed. Here's all my resolution failed. Here's all my threshold crossed. I can look for certain codes. I can sort by codes. I can sort by count. We have 15 of these. The description of the error, the distinguished name of the error. Oh, hang on. Do I have commas? Yeah, okay. Okay, so something in here is throwing this off, because you can see that I've overflowed my CSV file. And we're going to have to look for the comma. Now I think it might be in the description or the DN, or the, where is it going to be? Let's go look for commas. And we'll filter, we'll use Jinja 2 filtering to get rid of the comma. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the JSON, the raw JSON, and we're going to look for something with a comma in it. Right here, see this comma? That comma is adding a column. So in our description, yeah, in our description, that's what's causing it. Okay, so how do we handle that? I'll show you how we handle it. We go into our CSV and we find description right here, and we add a pipe replace, open brackets, quote, comma, comma, and let's just replace it with a space. Save it and rerun the code. Now it's only the CSV that I need to do this on, because the comma is actually adding another column. The mind map, the markdown, the HTML, everything else is fine. It's just the CSV that I need to handle that. So this will just take a second, and we'll take another look and see if this is resolved. And I think it will be resolved. Okay, so we go to fault summary, generate the CSV view. And now if I scroll all the way to the end, right, no more spillover. And I can even sort by type, right? Show me just the environmental faults. Show me just the config faults. Show me the operational faults. Just wonderful, wonderful way to run your APIC. And you can see now if I go to the description, that comma has just been replaced by a space. Now before we move on, let's make sure our other file types look good. Let's launch the browser. Everything lines up, and I can filter, I can search, I can paginate. Just awesome, just awesome. We've already looked at the JSON. Let's look at the Markdown. I'm not worried about the Markdown, it's fine. And let's look at the mind map. Now the mind map is going to be big because there's like 30 alarms. But we can see each of these faults as an interactive mind map. Woohoo! All right. That is awesome. So let's do our complete validation here. I'm going to flush out my output so it doesn't end up in the Git repo. I'm going to delete my build. I'm going to increment my init file. I've already done the README. I'm going to poetry version patch, poetry build, poetry publish using my token. I'm going to go back into my virtual environment. Let's rm/rf star pip install ACI-u, and I have 1110 ACI. Actually, you know what? I'm going to set up the environment variables because I keep testing and I keep having to type this stuff in. So this will make it a little faster. Let's set up the environment variables here. Export username equals admin, export password equals single quotes because the password has special characters. And now I can just run ACI. Now I'm really cooking. This is going really well. Hey Blake, where are you from, by the way? I don't think we've interacted on YouTube before. And thanks for joining and thanks for all the feedback. Okay, so now we do code. Whoops, code. And let's check the faults. Fault summary, CSV. Yeah, looks good. Wonderful. Okay, so now I can finish off my Git stuff because I know the build is successful. Commit this in as fault summary. Head over to my Git repo. Set up my pull request. Okay, awesome. So now since we're in here and we've done, boo. So we went to faults. Let's do events next. So what we're going to do is launch our API inspector, go to events, there are no events. Of course. Well, that's unfortunate. I don't have any events. What about audit log? Okay. We can do the audit log, which is class AAA mod LR. So let's take a look at that in the Visore, the object store browser. And we have the full. Oh, awesome. Kentucky, very cool. Thanks. Well, thanks again for all the support. I think that's awesome that you're watching the DevNet sessions. Now, there might be a lot of audit log here. I don't know how many, 239, and here's 239. So we can put the full audit log as a report. It's too bad there isn't events. Okay, so we just repeat this process again. We're going to make an audit log folder. Why didn't that trigger Git? That should have triggered Git. because I have git ignore files. Well, that's strange. Let's update the README. Audit log. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Audit. Audit log folders and README. And ACI. Audit log. Make the folder. Audit log. Audit log, which is AAA mod LR. Audit log. Now this is going to be really good. An audit log, instead of having to go into the APIC, we can just look at our audit log and it will be Git tracked. So we'll have every piece of activity in our Git repository from the audit log. And this will just, you've seen me do it a few times, but let's do it one more time. Oh my goodness, it's not copying that into my copy paste buffer. I don't want emojis. Audit log. All right, here we go. Audit log. Audit log. And we just do our copy repaste for our our multiple file types. YAML, 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 YAML. CSV, CSV, CSV. Markdown. HTML. And you mentioned that management might be interested in keeping the HTML pages. With just a little bit of extra code, we could TFTP that or FTP it or SCP it into, say, a Apache server that's always running, right, as part of this automation, so that you have an Apache server with a URL where you could just go look at the HTML pages. That's pretty easily done. So let's get our audit log as JSON and YAML. And then we're going to make our Jinja 2 templates. It's too bad there aren't any events. I may need to go find events from another APIC somewhere so I can add that. Okay, audit logs are done. There's my JSON of my audit log. There's my YAML. Now let's make the Jinja 2 the template for the CSV file. We're going to take from the end if to the else, replace that with fault summary, and we're going to call it log. Get rid of our header row, get rid of our data row, copy in that. Now, does it have a name? I guess affected. Well, maybe ID. Let's make ID the header here. And we go ID, comma. Again, I'm just making a nice comma separated header row here. This is going to be really nice. Just like the event summary, we're going to have the full audit log as business ready documents without ever logging into the APIC in a get tracked text-based repository. And what's IND? I don't know what that's short for. I guess I can just make it all caps, IND. I don't know what that stands for off the top of my head. Indicator? I don't know. Trigger. TXID. Oh, that's nice, Blake. That sounds cool. Yeah, you might want to look into, if they're tables that you're making with Jinja 2, you can even steal my header and footer Jinja 2. Just go into this repo and take my header and my footer Jinja 2, wrap it around your HTML Jinja 2, boom, you've got data tables, if it's tabular data that you're making. So let's collapse this. Nice. And we're going to copy this. And I said ID was the header or the first column. And we're going to find the colon, replace that with space, open mustaches, closing mustaches. Don't worry that it's red. Yeah, go ahead and steal my my data tables. Feel free to use it. That's why I write open source code, is really for other people to look at the code. It's pretty easy to figure out. You could even just take, you know, as long as your table ID is data table, then all of the code will match. And you just add the table ID, add the header, add the footer. Yeah, you feel free to use that code. And we're going to open mustaches log.AAA mod lr dot attributes dot. There's our CSV. Let's do the markdown. And we add a header called audit log pipe. Oh, I see I made a mistake. I left a trailing comma in here. Okay, that's fixed. Find that pesky comma and make it a space pipe space. Carefully replace all the commas. Add our delimiter. I don't know if IND is indicator. I don't know. I'll just leave it as IND for now. I should make that a capital D. I'll fix that in the CSV as well. Okay, so that's done, and I said I had a session ID, make that a capital D. Okay, now let's do the HTML. bit of white space padding. Close the table after the for loop. Grab the header information. And this is audit log. Find the comma. Close the table header. Open up a new table header. Close the header and open up a body. A new row. Close the row. Table delimiter. Close the delimiter. Replace our commas. HTML page done. Copy from the end if to the else. Move into the mind map. Weird that they're not showing changed. Why is the markdown not showing that it's changed, or the HTML? Something going on with my Git tracking here. Anyway. Get rid of the HTML. Get rid of the header. Call this audit log 12 ID, and then make all these 3 and start affected cause change set child action client tag code created description distinguished name IND last modified session ID severity status trigger TX ID and user. Save it, close it, run the code. Actually, did I comment out those things? I did. Let me uncomment out the code and give it a whirl. So now we'll have our audit log offline, right, without logging into the APIC. I'm a little bit bummed that there are no events. It would be nice to do events too as part of this, trilogy of audit, event, and faults. I hope the APIC hasn't died. It's kind of hanging here for a second. Okay, there it goes. Okay, now we should have an audit log. Check it out. Every one of our audit logs with an ID, the affected managed object, the cause, the change set, the code, the created time, and I could sort these by these fields as well. The description. Now, do I have any commas? Looks like there's lots of commas. Or do I have a trailing comma somewhere? I don't know, I have all these extra fields. Everything lines up, but it looks like I have some extra commas maybe. Yeah, see how everything's pushed over here? So it looks specifically like, all right, let's grab the affected and go looking for that in the JSON. Ah, boo. Does this not let me copy? Yeah, let me copy that. And look for it in the JSON. The copy is not working. And I don't really want to go through all of these logs looking for a single comma. Okay, so it looks like the change set. One 192.168.1.1. Let's look for that. Yeah, look at all these commas in the change set. And that's what's throwing it all off. Okay, so we're going to go to change set and replace the comma with spaces. So go to our CSV file, look for change set here, pipe, replace, comma with a space, and rerun the code. Oh, IND could be index. That's not a bad idea. Let's change that to be index maybe. Although it's weird that they would shorten index. It's only 2 more characters. Okay, audit log is done running. Now let's see, did our CSV file get fixed? I believe so. Yes, that looks a lot better. And if we look at change set, it's probably got right all the, yeah. Okay, wonderful. And the HTML page, how does it look? There is our audit log as a data table. Wonderful, very wonderful. And we've looked at the JSON. Let's look at the Markdown. Markdown, I'm pretty sure is going to be fine. It's going to take a bit to render because there's so many fields. Yeah, looks good. Now, I don't know. The mind map is maybe not going to be useful because there's so many fields. When I open it up as a mark map, it's going to crash my computer if I play with it too much. But yeah, it's going to be just huge. So maybe not the best use case for a mind map. Okay, so now let's flush our output. Let's increment our build, flush our last build, poetry version patch, poetry build, poetry publish using my token. Pip install ACI-U. Do that until okay, I've pulled down 11. ACI. Yeah, index is probably our best guess there. I think I'll just leave it as IND. I don't know what it could be. I'm just going to make sure that the audit log comes in, and then I'm going to wrap up the stream and get back to my real life. I got to feed the dogs. So let's just be sure, code, and make sure my audit log worked. audit log, and I have my files. Close that, close that, close that, push this code up. Why don't I have my latest build? It's like there's a lag with my... There we go. Okay, commit audit log. Okay, well, thank you everyone, and Blake, it's nice to meet you virtually like this. I'm going to just finish up pulling this code in and call it a day. We've added quite a few APIs. I think there's enough examples that you kind of get the idea. Let's do our pull request, live stream, pull in our code, and delete our live stream branch, and we're all set. So thanks for joining me, Blake. Great to meet you. And feel free to use my data tables. Feel free to look at the ICE implementation of this. And thanks again.